And welcome back to this next session here at Conference 2023. This is the Treasurer's report. We will possibly have time for some questions at the very end of this. So if you've got any questions pertaining to this, then get them in now, and we'll try and select a couple towards the end. We will hear from Kev Wilson, Deputy National Treasurer, as well. But to start things off, let's get that full report. Simon Kempton is the National Treasurer for the Police Federation. Simon.
Thank you, Ian. Good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, Conference, and welcome to this almost our final session. We've got a number of areas that we're going to cover. We'll look at the next couple of years and beyond then. Have a look at where we are currently with our finances. But before I do, I want to thank the Finance Department at Leatherhead, who've given me such incredible support over the year. Importantly, to branch treasurers across the country for the work that you're doing. And I can't forget our other National Treasurer, Kev Wilson. He works so hard, does so much for the organisation. Thank you, all of you. We're going to start by having a look at an overview of the current financial situation for 2023. We're going to focus on the year so far, and we're going to go up to the end of September. The first slide that we're going to look at. So this shows where, so far this year, we've spent our members' money. The main area of our spend, it's legal costs at about £11.4 million to the end of September. Other bills, costs, training costs, supporting our members, well, that's about £9 million. Payroll for staff across the country, that's £8 million. And the allocation to branches for core business, about £4.1 million. So what we see with this slide, it's a situation where our spend is focused on those areas that provide the best support for our membership, exactly as it should be. Next, we'll have a look at our income streams so far in 23. The largest area of income, it's not a surprise, we're a subscription-led organisation. That's £29.4 million. Legal cost recovery. Now, this isn't a budgeted income stream, but I need to mention a couple of colleagues, Craig Hewitt, Kirsten Peters, our heads of claims. They're working so hard with partners on this. That £2.5 million, although it's not budgeted, the effective recovery of those costs enables us to divert more funds to the support of our members. But with this slide, we do see why subscription income is so vital to Federation funding and why we're so focused on what our members need. So the next slide, what's what we call the cash report. This slide shows how we're, so far this year really, we're performing against our budget. And the main focus for this slide is an overspend of about £325,000. Bearing in mind it's on an accrual basis, but what that does, it shows us it's driven by legal costs. And it's those legal costs that we're going to take a bit more of a look at now. So we look at our claims budget over the year. What this slide shows us is that over the last 7-8 years, we've invested more and more money into this key area. And it reflects an upwards trend where more officers require more support from their federation. And at the end of the chart, what we see is a projected upwards trend, which itself demonstrates why it's such a difficult area to predict our costs in. But we're working together really hard to find further ways of driving efficiencies here, but importantly, whilst maintaining that service level for our members. And while we talk about efficiencies, it's important that we acknowledge this is an area where we've already done so much work. We can demonstrate that year on year we identify areas to save money so that it can be reused in other areas. Every single pound that we save is a pound that we can use elsewhere to support police officers. Kev and I wanted to talk to you about governance. In particular, over the last 12 months, some of the areas that we've really driven some transparency and trust. And it actually starts this journey a few years ago. Over the last several years, we've introduced the rafter policies. They're designed to bring tight controls over our finances and to lead us to a position where, I mean, we already had, up to this year, sector-leading governance. However, we always seek to improve and evolve. And so in 2023, we did exactly that with these policies. And we'll go through them now. The first one, with hospitality, we've separated what's called internal and external hospitality. That's important because it reflects HMRC guidance. It makes it simpler for us to comply with their rules. Clearer and better guidance to colleagues has been a really important area to bring improvements to. And then when we look at credit cards, we already had strong controls, but even stronger ones now than those we had to improve existing governance, to make sure that the admin is completed in time, and then that gives all of us more confidence. There's been a theme across various areas of our work where we see 43 different ways of doing the same thing, and none of them necessarily wrong, but this disparate approach makes life much harder for all of us. So this is one of the areas that we really wanted to improve upon. We wanted to make sure that there's a fairness and a consistency across all of our branches and the National Board. We want to make sure that we had a level playing field, because that's how you build trust, that's how you build engagement, and it's a position we've worked really hard to get to. Core funds, this is the nuts and bolts of what we do for our members. And again, fairness and consistency across branches and departments is so vital to the overall management of our funds. This approach ensures that members across the country can expect to receive the same core support. It doesn't matter where they are, whether they're in Cumbria or Kent or anywhere in between. But importantly, branches still have the ability to build on that in a way that works best for their members locally, using locally generated funds and reserves on projects that are important to those officers in those areas. To build on trust and transparency, all National Board expenses have been published publicly for more than a year now. It's really important. It demonstrates a real and a tangible openness, commitment rather, to openness. And it's something that will progress further as we go forwards. So all of those different areas build into one important committee that we're going to speak about now. It's the Finance Committee. The Police Federation has this vitally important group, and it's at the core of our financial governance. This committee is made up of a member of the National Council from each of the 8 regions, and actually one of whom chairs the committee, as well as a member of the National Board and colleagues from the Finance Department, including Kev and I. And as we'll see over the next couple of slides, the work of this group has evolved over the last few years, and I am incredibly grateful to the people who serve on that committee for the time and the effort that they selflessly give to the role. You do such an important job. Thank you, all of you. The committee looks, specifically at a number of different areas during its meetings over the year, and sometimes those areas can appear to be overlapping or even unconnected. But the job of the Finance Committee is to pull those areas together into some sort of order. And the first one, I guess, I'll touch on is oversight. This is the approach to every area of PFEW finances, and it ensures that we're complying with our rules and that we've got that consistent approach. Speaking of which, the consistency, that's driving an approach to our finances so we can demonstrate there's a level playing field across the entire organisation. And maybe the best example of that is with business cases. The committee reviews business cases and it brings recommendations on their funding. And that's important because that gives us fairness. The committee brings that fairness to our finances. It ensures that decisions that are being taken include the views of our branches and our local reps. Because it's our finances. We share this responsibility and we share the stewardship. And that's important when we talk about governance. Our national trustees are invited to the meetings, and that gives them sight of the Federation approach to finances. It gives them the reassurance that our policies are being properly implemented and used. And it all culminates at this time of the year, actually. We're in the middle of this process now. The committee helps the national treasurers to formulate and set the budget for the next year. And they do it by scrutinising every single budget submission. Literally thousands of lines of data. So, National Reserve Fund, just a brief word here about our reserves, how they're performing and why we actually need them, and that's going to lead on to some more slides. Thanks to decisions that we've all made between us and your support for those decisions, our reserves have grown over the last 12 months, even in the face of volatile market conditions, in the light of continuing unrest across the globe, the war in Ukraine. We've invested £1.2 million into our reserves, and that's after a prolonged period of relying on those reserves to maintain member services. And that's absolutely vital. because that gives us the means to fight for our members. It allows us to meet unexpected costs without having to affect the services that we give to them. It means that we can remain viable and functional into the future. This next little bit here, it's really important to both of us actually. It's something that we want to focus on for a little bit. And it's about value, not cost. In any circumstances in life, spending £5 and getting nothing or very little back for it, that's a fiver wasted. But spending 50 quid that helps protect us, protect our families, that improves our lives or our conditions at work, well, that's money well spent. Because, colleagues, we know on this conference that the Police Federation is more than just an insurance policy for those times that we face allegations after just doing our job. On the screen now, it's just a brief glimpse at some of the many areas that reps across the country are currently involved in, areas which are vital to achieving those improvements and which we fund because we see the tangible benefit to our membership. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, it barely scratches the surface. So much more goes on every single day in every single police station across England and Wales. Our reps are working tirelessly day and night to improve things for police officers. And so much of it goes unseen, but it's absolutely central to our work. And that's why we know it's an area that's absolutely vital to fund properly. So to reiterate the point, where we get better at showing what we can do for our members value their relationship with the Federation. And it's that question of value that should be central to our finances. Asking the question, this thing that we're about to spend money on, does it bring value to our members? And as we speak about value, affordability is an issue which comes up because they're connected. So we wanted to briefly touch on and remind you of an important part of our conditions. HMRC, if you look on their website, they list quite a long list actually, quite a large group of organisations whose subscriptions or membership can attract tax relief, and it's done via tax codes. But the Federation is almost unique as a staff association in being able to do this. And it's not by accident. It's not because the taxman was in a particularly good mood one day. It's because the Federation of the day fought hard to get this relief, and it is worth hundreds of pounds to each officer. And that means we've got a duty, all of us, to make sure that every member knows about this and that they claim the tax relief, especially those who work in a force that doesn't automatically do it for them. So this is just a brief explanation of a really key feature of our membership that goes to the heart of that value. Excuse me. And it's important because of this slide here. This is the effect that it has on our subs. It's huge. If you look on your payslip now, you think you paid £24.31 for membership because that's what it says. It's not right. We actually pay £19.45 thanks to that tax relief. Less than 20 quid a month for the incredible support, the incredible work that you are doing every single day of the year for those hard-working police officers. But it's right that every year we review our subscriptions, and when we do review them, we should be led by value as well as by affordability. And there is a way to tackle this really difficult, admittedly, subject in a way that keeps and protects those aspects. Because not only does this bring us to a position which is more affordable for our members, and we'll see more about that on the next slide, but it allows both them and us to plan better for the future. It allows us to look down the road at what's coming next rather than looking at our feet and start to plan 3-5 years in advance. And it's because of this chart here. This chart looks at what our approach in this area has been over the last few years and what it might have been if we'd taken maybe a different approach. And the blue line here, it shows how monthly subscriptions would have changed each year if, for example, they'd been pegged to pay awards, say. And what the red line shows is what actually happened. The Federation of the Day froze subscriptions for nearly a decade. And the Federation probably thought it was doing its members a favours, and in fairness, in the short term, it probably was. But in the longer term, as you can see on the red line, we were saving up that pain, and we were making the reviews less affordable. We'd come across this situation of boom and bust almost, which ensured that when a rise did come, it was a huge spike, rather than, as the blue line shows us, that flatter approach. And just to give you some context, the blue line there, we're talking about a rise of 20p a month, 15p a month, 30p a month, affordable. And this is important because you, our reps, you're there for our members 24/7. When they need you, you're there. Whether it's support following trauma, assistance with misconduct allegations, or just a hot drink in the middle of the night. And that's why we need to be properly funded. So next we're going to talk to you briefly about our external audit, our statutory audit. We work with KPMG, and KPMG are one of the big 4 audit companies, and that's to ensure a robust, thorough, a really transparent audit process. And our last audit was good. It gives huge reassurance to all of us. It shows that we're doing a good job. But there are areas where we can and we will continue to improve. The first one is how we do our banking across the branch network. It looks at improving how we undertake this area, initially by using the same methods and practices across the whole network. Branch asset registers. Now, this is a case of something that does already happen. It does. But again, it happens in different ways in different parts of the country. And by using the same method to record the assets we hold, we would bring significant improvements in this area. This next one, this is about all branches and departments doing bookkeeping in the same way. And that's to make us more efficient. That's to streamline the process of the audit. And then finally, the thing that's been drawn out, introducing and then using IT systems in a better way to give decision makers access to key information in a timely manner. This is something that will bring widespread improvements across the whole Federation. So this morning we heard from Mukund, our CEO, that we face a really difficult period in the coming years. So we wanted to briefly touch on how this might impact some of our financial decisions that we'll make together. Mukund has begun the process of briefing our organisation about this absolutely vital piece of work. And it is about much more than just our finances, but there is a financial element to the project. So let's have a look at that. And this is important to us as a department because over the next couple of years, there will be some difficult decisions for us to make. Some of the things that we've been grown used to doing, we might have to do differently, or maybe, perhaps, we might have to not do them at all. But there's going to be opportunities for us all the way. There really will. Opportunities to do things better, to be more efficient, to be more effective, to ensure that our priorities align with our strategy and with our members' needs. But let's be honest, we are going to have to pull together. We are going to have to remain united. And if we do that between us, we will ride this difficult road ahead. And that is how we're going to deliver Project Sunrise. That's how we're going to deliver a stronger federation, a better federation, one that's fit for the future. But let's talk briefly, at least, about what happens after Sunrise. What about the journey that those who come after us are going to have to take? And what can we do to help prepare the ground for them? Because as important as the next couple of years are, and they are, we do have to also have one eye on the longer-term future of our organisation. And this one, margin of safety, this is such a key area. And it's something actually that, again, that Mukund touched on this morning. This is something we have to improve on. What this slide shows is that before the year even starts, our financial commitments as a federation amount to about 98% of our budgeted income. Roughly speaking, therefore, that's the same as earning 40 grand a year. And on the first day of the year, you've already committed to spending 39,200 in direct debits and standing orders. So you've only got 800 quid to last for the whole year for anything unexpected. We've got to increase this margin so that in the future, we're able to ride the bumps in the road without having to draw from our reserves or even consider the service that we give to our members. We wouldn't be comfortable with this position in our personal lives, and we shouldn't be in our professional lives as stewards of this organisation. And that's because by building strong reserves, it allows us to change the narrative. It allows us to continue to be there when our members need us. It means being able to fight those battles which are important to our members by driving that feeling of value, having a proactive approach, backed up with the resources that that approach needs, so that police officers' conditions are fair and it allows them to concentrate on protecting the public without having to worry about feeding their families. And that is where we drive the value of our membership. So when I was putting this together with Kev, I came across a couple of photographs, and we might have seen them before. Two different photographs, but very similar. The first one from our first ever Federation meeting more than 100 years ago. And then the second, the colour one, from our centenary event a couple of years ago. And this said to me, it shows the job that we've been doing for so many of our officers over the years, and it's something that I'm proud of, we should be proud of. But it reminds me as well that we've got a duty to more than 140,000 officers out there today. And actually, come to that, we've got a duty towards the police officers of the future, the ones who haven't even joined the police yet, to make sure that there's a strong, relevant federation looking out for them. Because those future officers are going to need us, and those who come after us in their corners, doing our job for them. So, finally, just to touch again on the key themes that we've been talking about over the last 20, 30 minutes or so. These are the themes that are central to the work that Kev and I do for you, to the work which all of our branch treasurers do every single day of their working lives. The key themes that are going to take us forward. Because these themes are the building blocks that are going to help us to achieve our objectives. These are the themes that will help us secure our future for our future members. Because those officers need us there to support them, to protect them, and to look after them. Thank you, conference.
And thank you, Simon. Some powerful stuff there to get into. We're also joined by Kev Wilson, who's the Deputy National Treasurer as well. We haven't got long on this section, but I think we can get a quick question in as well. This one comes from Robert Watson, who says, can you please explain why we've not published more recent accounts for members to view and scrutinise? The most current on the PFEW website is the year ending December 2020. I appreciate there will always be a delay in finalising accounts and final sign-off, but this seems like a significant delay. Kev, do you want to take that? Or
yeah, sure. Thanks, Robert. And you're absolutely right. There has been a delay. To answer the question, it's probably worth going back a couple of years and looking at where we've come from. As an organisation, we used to have best part of 60 individual audits every single year. Every branch had at least one, Leatherhead had 4, and it cost us hundreds of thousands of pounds. And it meant that even if the auditors at the time or the accountants were doing their job right, there'd be 40-odd different ways of interpreting rules that HMRC set in place. So we wanted to do two things. We wanted to save a load of money, and we wanted to make one transparent, open, uniform way of doing our finances.
Yeah.
But it's really complicated. It saves us more than £250,000 a year, but bringing that all together, and that's what we were talking earlier, KPMG drew out, they need us to start doing things in the same way to make the system work much quicker. Once we do that, we'll be very slick and streamlined.
Kev, here's a more generalised question. What is the biggest challenge to PFEW financially?
Consistency. Unfortunately, as Simon's highlighted before there, we've got, sometimes frustratingly, we're mirror policing. We've got 43 different ways of doing things. So for me, consistency is one of the most important things, and getting the branches to be all mirrored and work in the same way to get the finances and following the policies as well. We've still got a lot of things that we need to work on that, and a lot more effectiveness to do.
I mean, an outsider would say, isn't there a software program that does that kind of thing these days?
There is indeed. So one of the things that we're doing is we're introducing new IT across the organisation, and part of that will be modernising exactly that area. Yeah. So we're getting there. We just have to be really careful how we manage the money and how we spend it and when we spend it.
Question here from Ollie, who says, Simon, are we going to link our Federation subs then to the pay rise as the Police Superintendents Association do? If so, will that mean we don't have to consider the subs every year, as we seem to do at present?
I really like that question, actually. It gives me an opportunity to say something I wanted to say. We review our subs every year. It's normal. Kev and I, with the National Board and the National Council, and every year we look at our income, we look at our expected outgoings, and have we got enough money for the next year? However, the question is absolutely right. If we're going to improve or increase our subs, it's better to do it against the metric that people understand, whether it's inflation, pay awards, or whatever. I think we should only ever increase subs where we need to. It shouldn't be on a whim. Just because pay awards has come in doesn't mean we should put subs up. But where we need to maintain services to make sure that we are there for 140,000 hard-working men and women, that's where we increase subs. And to do it against the metric that people understand, I think, is helpful.
Yeah. What about increasing members? That's always obviously that's an ongoing issue, arguably.
Yeah, it's also worthy of saying that the mechanisms and the rules that we have in place as well, the only forum platform that we have to put subs up, and there's probably members don't understand this, there's a processes that we have to follow. It isn't just down to the Treasurer and I to say, guess what, we're putting subs up. Like we have with our household bills when it comes to the letterbox and we see it's gone up. We don't like it, but it has. We don't have those powers. There's rules that we have to follow, and it's the delegates at conference. And it's difficult for me to think a year ago I was in the audience doing exactly that, and here I am now in the National Board, and I've not changed. You know, I still see the difficulties that we have, but you get a better understanding of where we need to go.
Just to add that, though, if the Home Secretary does want to give us a further 20,000 members...
That'd be lovely. Yeah.
Well, she said she wouldn't have done anything different to what Theresa May did.
There we are.
She didn't explicitly say it, of course, but in so many words. Here's one from Richard Cook, who says, how much risk is there in not raising subs this year, and will this just simply mean a bigger than expected rise in the future?
You're right, Rich, and you actually speak to one of the slides that we had. I want us to get away from that boom and bust. I would much rather we put subs up by 20p, 30p every year than leave it for a decade and put them up by 2 or 3 quid. Because you really feel that. You really feel that as an officer, as one of our members. The danger is, we know that our costs rise every year. We know that those costs solicitors pass on to us, and we have to absorb them. There comes a point where we can't draw on our reserves anymore because they're not big enough. So we either have to cut services or increase the amount that we ask people to pay. And our services are so vital. Our services save lives, they save jobs. So that really ought to be a last resort. Now, I don't mean we can't be more efficient. Where we can save money without cutting services, that's what we should do, that's what we do. But there comes a point where we have to say we need to maintain these services. Yeah,
and I guess, Kev, it's, I mean, that slightly twee phrase, work in progress. Yeah. In this area of the Federation, it's always a work in progress, right? I mean, there's never a point when you say, right, everything's sorted now, all systems are in place, everything's hunky-dory, that's it, we can step down. No, absolutely. That day never comes. Never comes, never comes. And neither should it, perhaps. No, it shouldn't. And I absolutely agree with you. And I think it's a very valid point you raise. And it's good that the members understand that that's what we're doing as well. We're not just sitting on our laurels and expecting that's it, the job's done. No, the policies need to be continually reviewed. And that's part and parcel of our role and responsibilities, as is annual reviewing of subs. That's part of our role and responsibility to do that. Yeah. But unfortunately, there's processes and rules that have to govern those decisions further along the line. That's the difficulty and frustrations at times that we have, but you follow the rules, you follow the governance, because if you don't, that's when you leave yourself vulnerable. And Simon, just a final point before we finish. Look towards the next, not just the next year, the next couple of years. What are you seeing happen in this area? How are you sensing the landscape will look? There's obviously a whole variety of structural changes that are likely to come in. We heard from the CEO earlier today. Things always change, as we were just saying. What's your kind of prediction, generally speaking, for the next 24, 36 months? I think one area that's going to be vital, and it's an area where the National Council are already heavily involved, but I think they're going to become even more involved through the Finance Committee. And we're really going to need our local reps to feed in through your branch council, your branch board, so that your reps who sit on the Finance Committee are reflecting what you want to see from our finances. That's how we build good governance, that's how we build trust and engagement. And I think particularly during Up Sunrise, as we navigate these difficult waters, Finance Committee is going to be super important. Yeah. Gents, thank you. Kev, Simon, great to see you both. Thank you. We are going to take just a very short 90-second, 2-minute pause just to reset. We've got the Q&A panel on the way. That will be your National Chair, your Deputy National Chair, National Secretary, National Treasurer. Simon is staying with us, and CEO as well. So this is fairly general stuff. If you've got an overarching question for any of the panel, then send it through to us now. You know what to do, you know how to make that happen, and we'll try and get as many of those questions pertaining to the various panel members as possible. Literally, this is not a full break, it's just a 2-minute reset, and we'll be right back after this.